Hello everyone, it's James from Theresa's Soundworld Alternative Music blog. Now, sometimes I'll sit down to write a review and I'll find that there are too many ideas going on in my head and the music has affected me in a certain way that I can't actually fit it into a written review. This happens every now and again. It's usually where it's a deep-rooted genre of music or a band I have grown up with where I just can't express it in the written word. Now, this happened recently with a review I did of a Sonic Youth film that I've watched for decades. And it's happened recently with a band called Malcura as well. Now, Malcura are a three-piece from Melbourne, Australia, and they combine flamenco with metal, world music, and other sort of genres as well that get thrown into the mix. Now, I have reviewed them before on the Soundworld, and they've recently released a new album called Malcura 2. And I found that listening to it, I couldn't quite put into words exactly how I felt about it. Now, I have switched recently on the Soundworld to doing a track of the day. So for all intents and purposes, this is going to be a loose review of the first track of the album, actually called Malcura itself. Now, with flamenco music, my passion for that and for classical guitar music, Spanish guitar, whatever you want to call it, goes back a long way. And this is why when I hear music of this sort, I sometimes will find it difficult to write in the written word and I'll just start talking like this. So this is completely improvised. So with Malcura, like I say, they combine a flamenco sound with world music and metal. Really, from listening to them, the sort of metal that they channel is thrash metal, I think. Now, I think that this band have aspects of Rodrigo y Gabriela, the Mexican duo, although I feel that's a bit of a lazy comparison because you could say anyone who takes a genre further on, you compare it to whoever is in the highest profile in the public eye. But I do think they have got an aspect to this Malcura. They come from a busking background, which is really nice because you can hear that real passion that a busker gives in their performance. But I'll go back to the busking thing in a moment. With Malcura, they are very, very proficient musicians. It comes across so clearly. And as a fan of classical guitar music, I'm often amazed by guitarists' technical ability. Some of my favourite guitarists are people like the Canadian Norbert Kraft. There's a UK classical guitar duo called the Edenstyle Guitar Duo. People like John Williams, the guitarist, not the composer. And the list goes on. But I feel that there's like a traditional flamenco feel with Malcura, a lot like Paco Pena, the Jimi Hendrix of flamenco, I suppose he is. I've been a fan of his for a long time. But also with Malcura, they take the form and then they transform it into something else. So often listening to them, they remind me of Paco de Lucia, who famously was a flamenco player who he, in his work, added jazz into the mix. And when he did some of his famous stuff in the 70s, there was almost like a sort of funk feel to it. And also there was almost hints of Carlos Santana in as well, the rock guitarist. So I feel that Malcura do this, where they take the form and they don't gimmickly change it. It's just very natural. And it flows a lot. There's, in this new album, there's aspects of, I think, like Samba bands with that sort of world music influence. If you've ever been to Rio de Janeiro in Brazil during Mardi Gras, this band really remind me of some of the Samba bands you get in the processions, the power and the passion Samba bands, when they're doing it right, channel, and I believe that Malcura do this. I think personally my love of Spanish guitar goes back many years. I was just in the right place at the right time. I was born in 1974, so I grew up in the UK with a lot of classical guitar around in the public consciousness. In the 70s, there was a lot of classical music was very trendy, and you had, like I was saying, guitarists like John Williams were really in the public eye. He famously recorded a version of Casa Vita, the theme from the Deer Hunter. Not that I saw the Deer Hunter for decades after the 70s. I was only a little kid, but I just remember that tune being played at school in assembly, and it kind of fired up my enthusiasm for the guitar. And also in the 70s in the UK, there were lots of kids' TV programs where a lot of the presenters were like old hippies from the 60s who'd transitioned somehow into TV, and lots of them were the stereotype is a hippie playing an acoustic guitar, but these presenters would be playing a classical guitar and playing it with such finesse and style. And if you think Generation X people, back in the 70s, little kids like myself, we would have listened to, if you're from a certain generation and a place in the UK, you would have known about Finger Bobs and all these sort of shows that Bagpuss that had sort of this sort of classical guitar influence. And actually there was a program called Trumpton which had a lot of classical guitar, and I've actually discovered that it was this guy, this guitarist Freddie Phillips, who I knew nothing about, but I've become a fan of his over the last few years. So over time, I really got into the guitar like that. And then as a teenager, being into thrash metal, it was always disappointing for me when a band like Metallica would have a token acoustic song, and you'd think, can't all of it be like that? Can't they have this sort of nice Spanishy guitar edge all the way through? Bands like Black Sabbath had occasional songs as well, like Fluff and that kind of thing, where a classical guitar was added in. But I found it always frustrating. And even bands like Sepultura, who had, you know, their sort of Portuguese influence and their world music influence, didn't always fully do this acoustic sound. There's a few songs by them which have this sort of acoustic bent to it, but I think Malcura actually have really channeled that. They've taken everything that's good about thrash metal, the sort of power of it, the rhythm, the Gerda-like bar chords and the nice ringing arpeggios and lead parts, and turned it into something that can be combined with flamenco. Because I feel that a lot of metal, whatever subgenre of metal it is, it's one of those types of music that has a real link to classical music. And really flamenco for me is sort of like a subgenre of classical music. But with going back to the whole busking thing with Malcura, I think that although their songs are very precise, like this first track, Malcura, there's lots of rhythm going on, there's lots of surprises. And I think that that only comes from when you're a busker and when you're in the street. And I think that anyone passing by that would see Malcura playing would be amazed by them, because you don't know what you're going to get next. And the first track that is really track of the day, the actual track Malcura, is just full of so much rhythm and lots of tambour guitar, tambour being where you use percussive effects on your guitar, and it's just an amazing tune to listen to. I was just really blown away by the way it weaved in and out, and so natural and so much fun as well. Unlike, say, a lot of thrash metal where it's angsty, bands like Slayer and Metallica, there isn't much of a vocal element at all with Malcura, and there's more of a kind of a pulpy sci-fi theme, which is some of their song titles and their artwork sort of channels a bit more Lost in Space than, say, The Handmaid's Tale or something like that. It's like the antithesis of dystopian. You know, it's very bright in terms of this sci-fi kind of leaning. So there's a lot of fun songs on the album, but concentrating on that first one as an opener to an album, it will blow you away. And also I recommend listening further to the album. There's so many little hints of different genres without being derivative, without you thinking, oh, this is the samba one or this is the slower one. It's not like that. They're expert musicians and they're able to craft something into something really enjoyable. And I also feel, and I don't always feel like this about all bands or acts, but I think they have a crossover mainstream feel. I think that if a lot of people into different types of music, or not people who aren't really into music as much, appreciated Malcura, saw them live, or even just heard them on digital or on record, would be amazed by them. They're not just musicians, they're entertainers as well, I think. So this is probably the end of my ramble anyway, totally improvised, but you can see why I can't really commit this necessarily to written word. But with this video, there will be a link, whether this is on Facebook or on Instagram or YouTube. There is a link, but if you can't access the link, go to Bandcamp, look up Malcura from Melbourne, Australia, and check out Malcura 2. Specifically, my track of the day, Malcura itself. There's also other recordings from this band, which I highly recommend you check out. They're brilliant musicians, brilliant entertainers, excellent tunes, and I think they are challenging music as well. I think they're mind-expanding music. Anyway, Malcura, give them a go. Cheers for now.